Coming up on Dr. Kiki Science Hour, we're talking SETI-Con and the search for alien life with Dr. Seth Shoatk from SETI. That's up next on Dr. Kiki Science Hour.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit. Bandwidth for Dr. Kiki's Science Hour is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Dr. Kiki's Science Hour with Dr. Kiki Sanford. Recorded on Thursday, July 29th, 2010. It's an alien party. This episode of Dr. Kiki's Science Hour is brought to you by GoToAssist Express. If you're tired of traveling to fix tech support problems in person, resolve them quickly online with GoToAssist Express. For a free 30-day trial, go to gotoassist.com/Kiki. Welcome, everyone, to Dr. Kiki's Science Hour. I'm Dr. Kiki, and this is the hour where we talk about science for pretty much an entire hour. Today, we've got a special treat. It's the science of searching for aliens and, well, you know, celebrating searching for aliens as well. SETI and the SETI Institute have been around for years. This year, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary. The SETI Institute itself is celebrating 25 years of doing scientific research. And additionally, what else is going on? They're also having a con. It's called the SETI-Con this summer. And I'm trying to look on my list here. Oh, here it is, the 80th birthday of SETI pioneer Frank Drake. So there's a lot of anniversary. This is a big year. And here to talk to us today about SETI and what's going on there and the party that they're planning is Seth Shoatk, senior astronomer and also host of Are We Alone? Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Kiki. It's, as always, a pleasure to be here, even if here is not quite where you are, but it's virtually where you are.
Virtually. That's the joys that we have with the modern technological age, being able to connect in space and time virtually. Can almost be there. We were talking
cyber presence.
Right. I was talking today earlier on a different show, Tech News Today. We were talking about video game controllers that now add temperature to the controllers. So we have haptic feedback and we have now temperature. So if you're playing maybe a third-person shooter and the gun gets hot that you're shooting, then the controller will actually get hot.
My goodness. Okay, when are they going to go to smell-o-vision? I keep waiting for that in the film.
Seriously, right? It's like, come on, want to smell it? Come on. I think that's going to be a challenge. I think that'll be a challenge.
Well, they tried it actually in the 50s, but it didn't work very well because it took too long to get the smells out of the theater for the next smell.
Ew. So today I wanted to talk about SETI-Con primarily, and then get into the history of SETI and exciting things that SETI is doing right now. But coming up very soon, in a couple of weekends, actually, you at the SETI Institute are having a con. Can you explain what a con is, first and foremost, for those maybe non-geeks? I don't know if there are any non-geeks that watch the show, but if there are, maybe you can explain what a con is to them.
I'm not sure I know what a con is either. I've been to a lot of cons, and I can tell you that the characteristics of a con were you'd get a whole bunch of people into a relatively small area, a convention center somewhere. People who are interested in similar things, like Comic-Con is one of the bigger cons around.
Sorry.
Oh, that's good. Is that the sound effect from Comic-Con? I don't know.
That's it, exactly.
Just threw the camera, into the. Well, in fact, SETI-Con is like these other cons in that we get a whole bunch of people together, but not because they're interested in comic books or because they're interested in science fiction and fantasy exclusively. We're trying to combine a few things where people who are interested in science and science fiction can come together. So it's an experiment. We're going to try it. We're going to see what we can do right, what we can do better, and hope to make this an annual event. So it's going to be a weekend. in which we're going to have a whole bunch of really interesting scientists. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it's not. Interesting scientists and quite a few celebrities from the world of science fiction, and both written and television science fiction and films and so forth. And there'll be talks, there'll be panels, there'll be lots of activities.
Do you think this is going to be, bringing together the scientific world and the celebrity world? I mean, is this mixing two separate entities, or do you think this is going to be a good mixing of these fields? What do you think about that?
I think it will be. I've been on panels in the past where, I represent the scientists, if you will, and then there are also the science fiction people on the panel, and we talk about, for example, what's wrong with the science fiction you see in the local multiplex, right? What's wrong with Hollywood science or television? The science of Star Trek. That's been an enormously popular subject. Lawrence Krauss wrote a book about it, like 15, 20 years ago, and it's done very well. People are interested in that. The people are familiar with the popular culture. They're familiar with what they see on television, and they're sort of interested to know, well, could you have hyperdimensional physics? Or could you have warp drive? Or would the aliens really look like Klingons and stuff like that? So there's some of that. I think that the mixture is a natural one, and I think a very fun one, too. There'll also be skepticism. Phil Plait will be there, others. It's a potpourri, but I think that the mixture, the ingredients, are such that they'll, produce something tasty when we take it out of the oven.
Yeah, I think it's an area that, especially space, and the question that you ask on your radio show, Are We Alone? So much science fiction does deal with aliens and alien civilizations, advanced civilizations, physics that maybe is still highly theoretical, that people are just imagining still. So to try and bring what we know currently into the mix with the dreaming of what could be in the future, I think is a really interesting interplay, and I think there's more and more of it happening recently.
I think that's true. I remarked that the National Academy of Sciences, which is a very prestigious organization in Washington, D.C., and is a National Academy of Scientists, after all, they have recognized the fact that, a lot of people get motivated to study science or just learn more about it by going to the movies and seeing these sort of strange aliens cavorting around the galaxy, or just some science fiction theme. It isn't necessarily connected with space. That's certainly the way I got interested in science. I don't know about you, but, when I was a kid, back before they invented paper, I went to all these cheesy science fiction films on the weekends, and I thought, gee, that's kind of neat, So I got interested at an emotional level, even though the science wasn't terribly right. Well, the National Academy of Sciences has recognized this fact that, movies have a big influence on the next generation of scientists. So they have set up a small office down in Los Angeles that gets in contact with producers of upcoming science fiction films and brings in scientists to advise them on the science, to give them some new scientific ideas or just correct things that might be wrong in the script or whatever. I've been part of that myself. The woman who runs that is Jennifer Oubliette, and she's going to actually be at SETI-Con, along with her cosmologist husband, Sean Carroll, by the way.
Yeah, she's fabulous. She's written some really interesting books herself, bringing together physics with the pop culture world and kind of aligning these two things. And I think the power couple nature of the astrophysicist and the science writer, I think they'll bring something great to the con. Definitely.
Definitely. Yeah, indeed. I'm trying to think if we have any other husband-wife combos at this thing. I don't think so. We have people like Mary Roach. I don't know if Mary Roach is a writer who
San
wrote.
Jose. Was she working for Did she work for the San Jose Mercury News?
I don't
know.
You may know more about her background than I do. She's written a lot of books. She is from the Bay Area, that is true. But she wrote Stiff, about what happens to dead bodies. She wrote Bonk, kind of sexual researchers around the world. She's written a new book about going to Mars. And, and of course her books are very, very humorous, very clever. She's going to be there as well. Along with, we're going to have a science fiction writer, Robert Sawyer. He's a Canadian. He lives just outside of Toronto. He's written lots of science fiction books, very successful books. So, they'll be represented as well. Andrei Bormanis, that's a name that probably doesn't resonate with all the viewers of this podcast. But on the other hand, he's the guy who's been the science advisor for a lot of the Star Trek series, and also has written some of the episodes for other science fiction series. And he's just a fascinating guy to listen to, because he'll just tell you all these stories about, how they concocted some little bit of business in one of the Star Trek episodes.
And I'd love to hear those stories. The story, I think being able to tell stories and wrap a story around the science. Do you think that's a really integral part of being able to get people's attention when it comes to the science that's going on?
Well, I think more and more so it is. In the old days, science fiction stories were often written by people, in the very old days, written by people who didn't necessarily know very much science, but they were good story writers. They knew how to tell stories. But, beginning with guys like, Isaac Asimov is classic, right? Isaac Asimov was a research chemist, and he had a position at Boston University, and apparently at one point in his career, the dean called him into his office, the dean's office, and said, well, Isaac, what would you rather do? Teach chemistry here and hope to get tenure and whatever, or would you rather go off and write those stories you seem to like writing? And apparently Asimov thought about it for, 5 milliseconds and decided, I think I'd rather write the stories. Good thing that he did. But, it's... but his books all have an element of science. I mean, he wrote a lot of nonfiction, not just pure science, but he knew the science. He knew science well enough that his books are rooted in the science. And I think that makes them, obviously it makes them more plausible, but I also think that's an interesting jumping off point. Greg Benford today is another example of somebody who knows the science. And for that matter, Robert Sawyer himself is fairly well schooled in the science. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good thing. I might mention that Robin Asimov, who's the daughter of Isaac Asimov, will be at SETI-Con.
Is she trained in science at all, or is she just there on her daughter's celebrity status?
Well, I hope she doesn't hear this. She's not trained in science. She was actually, she's trained in psychology. Right. And I won't opine about whether psychology is science or not. I mean, I assume it. But her day job really, at least these days, is to manage her father's estate. So they're all, he wrote 450 books. Can you believe that? 450 books. And, several of them, or at least one of them recently has been turned into a film, I, Robot. I think they may be working on another one. There are options on his Foundation series and so forth, and they've not actually made that. But in any case, so, the books get reprinted. All this requires handling, and that's what Robin does these days. But she's very interesting. If you talk to her and you say, what was it like living with Isaac Asimov? And, of course, from her point of view, he was just dad. So she has insights and stories about how he worked and so forth that I just personally find very fascinating. I mean, she'll tell you how she would be allowed up into the room where he wrote his stories. She was the only one that would be allowed up there, actually, because he really doted on his daughter. And she'd be playing on the floor looking through, picture books and stuff like that. And her father would be typing at his electric typewriter. He wrote everything on a electric typewriter. They tried to get him to use a computer, but he wasn't actually that technically competent. In fact, he didn't like that new technology stuff. But in any case, so he's typing away, and she asks her dad a question, and he would turn and he would look down at Robin on the floor, and he would smile at her, and he would answer her question. But she says he never stopped typing. So she has lots of stuff like that. Yeah, really interesting. He had a mind like a steel trap, apparently. If he read something, he never had to look it up again. It was just there. It was available. A giant hard disk with instant access.
Yeah, I can only dream of having a brain like that. If it does happen, it will come through technology. So, not naturally given. No, I have to look things up over and over again. Who else is going to be there? You're in terms of entertainment, are you? I saw something about Mickey Hart being involved.
Yeah, he's coming on Friday night. This thing runs Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I haven't said anything about the location and the time. The
location, the dates, yeah.
Yeah, there may be some people who want to show up. I hope they do. It's the weekend of August 13, 14, and 15. So 13, 14, 15, not too far away. And it'll be held at the Santa Clara Convention Center. Santa Clara, of course, is right here in the lovely, glamorous Silicon Valley, about an hour's drive south of San Francisco. There's also public transportation to that, by the way. So I said the Santa Clara Convention Center. That's not quite right. It's next door to that. It's at the Hyatt. It's at the Hyatt Santa Clara Hotel. Hyatt Santa Clara Hotel. But the thing to do is, rather than listening to me maunder on about these uninteresting technical details, anybody who would like to go and wants to see what the program is should just go to SETI-Con.com. SETI-Con.com, and there's everything, and you can get a ticket there. And yeah, you see, you're already on it. Those are some things we're going to auction off. That's a book there signed by Carl Sagan, Contact. And there's Mickey Hart, who is the drummer for the Grateful Dead, or the Dead as they're called these days. And he's going to be presenting a video that is in production on Friday night, which deals with the cosmos. So I think that's going to be actually an interesting event. I'm not a Deadhead myself, although I like the music. But anyhow, I'm actually looking forward to that because I think I will be unexpectedly blown away, which usually only happens in local explosions.
Yeah, I have no idea. I've never heard Mickey Hart play aside from the Grateful Dead, so that would be fun. The rock band concert sounds exciting.
Yes. No.
Sounds like that could be. Let's see, hosted by Phil Plait. That could potentially be.
I never knew Phil Plait had useful talent. Yes.
Yeah, where's that going to go? What's going to happen there?
I don't know, but that'll be fun. And of course, we haven't said anything about the scientists who are going to be there because that sounds self-promoting. But we're going to actually have some nifty, swifty scientists. Mike Brown from Caltech, actually, who's an excellent speaker, by the way. Mike Brown is the guy who found all those icy worlds beyond Pluto that led to Pluto's demotion as a planet, right? Not a planet anymore. And it was Mike Brown's work that caused that. Although Mike Brown had nothing against Pluto. I want that for the record here. We're going to have Peter Yanniskins, David Morrison, obviously Jill Tarter, Frank Drake, myself. There's going to be a big dinner for Frank Drake because, as you mentioned, he's had a birthday just a couple of months ago. He turned 80. And I have to say, that sounds like it's, he's not a spring chicken anymore. Maybe he's a fall chicken. But Frank is just the same as he was when I first met him when he was 45. So Frank will be there, and there'll be a little dinner in his honor that people can buy tickets to as well.
Speaking of Frank Drake, how are things going in terms of the Drake equation? And I mean, what he is most known for is the Drake equation and the probability of finding life elsewhere in our universe. People are constantly revising the equation, trying to come up with other parameters that maybe haven't been thought of. But where does it currently stand?
Yeah, well, Frank tells me that just about every week he gets emails from people who think, look, your Drake equation is missing my term. So they have a new term to add to the Drake equation. He tells me that from his point of view, in his opinion, none of these suggested additions is actually necessary. He says the equation is complete in and of itself. Yeah, but the Drake equation was just an agenda for a meeting dealing with SETI. The idea was to try and estimate, well, look, we're going to point these antennas up at the sky trying to hear ET, eavesdrop on ET. How many societies are out there in the Milky Way galaxy that are broadcasting signals that are reaching us right now? I mean, how many is that? If it's only 3 or 5 or some small number like that, then probably doesn't pay to look for them. But if it's thousands, then it does. And so the Drake equation just tries to compute that on the basis of, well, how many stars are out there with planets that are suitable for life, how many of them actually produce life, how many of those that produce life ever produce something clever, like our viewers and listeners here, how many of those have built a radio transmitter that's on the air now, and how long do they stay on the air before they build an H-bomb and go off the air, or whatever it is they do to one.
Go digital like we're going.
Well, that makes it a little harder to find them, but we still have our radars, and those you could pick up. So that's what it is. Now the thing is that this equation goes back to 1961, and when it was cooked up, people sort of sat around and thought, well, what do you think the value of N is? I mean, how many societies are out there that are broadcasting? And they made some estimates, which I have to say, I looked at just a few years ago and tried to update them with the latest and greatest astronomical information, and the values didn't change very much. I mean, these guys were either very lucky or very clever. And I think they were very clever, actually.
Yeah, there was something I caught in my my reader, RSS reader this morning, a story. Where was it? I think it was on either Ars Technica or Ars Technica or some physics archive blog or something. What everyone reads. But there was, I think the authors took the Drake equation and then added the interaction of different intelligent species. So if in different parts of the universe you have life pop up independently, but then they start to interact, that interaction and communication can potentially increase the longevity of the civilizations together.
Yeah, I think that's true. If somebody asks me, Seth, do you have any changes you'd make to the Drake equation? About the only thing I could think of is that there isn't a term in there for colonization. In other words, it does assume that some species cooks up on this world over here, and it just stays there forever. And it doesn't have any interactions, and it doesn't spread out and colonize other star systems and so forth. And who's to say? Maybe they do both of those things. So that would indeed. But on the other hand, you could say, well, all that does is increase the number of societies we might hear from. So that's only good news.
But for you at SETI, I mean, there are people. I mean, according to Hawking, didn't Hawking say that if we're going to be approached by an alien civilization, that they're probably going to destroy us, or that they're all going to kill us right away?
Yeah, that was kind of a sunny prediction from Stephen.
Yay!
Well, what he said, this was publicized in connection with a Discovery Channel television show about Hawking. And he actually made these statements years and years ago, actually. I remember when they first came out, they were news, but, they came out again because it's kind of relevant maybe to the television show. And what he said was, maybe we should beware of contact with aliens because, after all, you don't know what they're like. And if we, for example, were to broadcast signals to them, it's like shouting in the jungle. Maybe not a good idea because you don't know what's out there, and it could be something malevolent. I actually have written something about this. It could be that they're malevolent aliens. I mean, who knows? We don't know anything about alien behavior. But if you're really going to worry about that, then the idea is not to say, well, we better shut down, ABC, NBC, all the radars at the local airports and everything else that makes radio noise because it might be dangerous to tell them we're here.
Right.
But it's just too late for that. We've been broadcasting for 70 years. And while those signals will be fairly weak by the time they reach any alien planet, any society that could actually either come here and wreak havoc and destruction or send their missiles that would wreak havoc and destruction, any society that's at that level could easily pick up our signals. So really, that horse has left the barn. You don't have to worry about it. Or if you're going to worry about it, you can worry about it, but it doesn't help to suddenly go quiet now.
Yeah, a little too late. Too little too late at this point.
Too little too late.
Yeah, in terms of the frequencies, where we're talking mostly like radio and television frequencies that we've been using and broadcasting at. Are there other frequencies that you at SETI are looking for, or are you pretty much tuning into the same signals that we would be giving out?
No, we actually, in general, don't. We don't listen at the frequencies of our own television or, sometimes our own radars, but not our own television. That's a pretty low frequency, and the equipment is not really very good for that. There are also problems with the interstellar gas, and so we're messing those things up. But we listen at frequencies, they're what are called microwave frequencies. These are frequencies up between about 1 and 10 gigahertz for those who like gigahertz in their daily conversation. And microwaves, but those seem to be the best in terms of two things. One, they go right through all the interstellar gas and dust. They just slice through that stuff like hot butter. So, those signals will arrive without too much difficulty. The other thing is that the universe turns out to be relatively quiet at those frequencies. There aren't too many natural noise makers that make a lot of cosmic static that could mess up the signal too. So we figure we know this, ET will know this. And so if they're really trying to get in touch, they may broadcast at these microwave frequencies. We certainly do for a lot of reasons.
And what are you using currently to actually pick up these frequencies? What are the current telescope or receiver arrays that you have set up for it?
Well, it turns out, SETI is a fairly modest endeavor. I don't mean that the scientists themselves are modest, because that's usually not true, but the experiment is, I mean, the total number of people who are doing this in the entire world is like 10, right? It's very small. There's an experiment at Harvard University where they're using a conventional optical telescope, and they're looking for flashing laser pulses coming from the sky. That's called optical SETI for obvious reasons. The Italians are doing a very clever little radio search near Bologna. They're at the University of Bologna, where they're just trying to find, radio signals. That's the traditional thing. We're doing that, of course, at the SETI Institute, and also the University of California, Berkeley has a SETI program. They use the big antenna down in Puerto Rico. The Italians have their own antenna, and we use an antenna that we built together with a different group at the University of California at Berkeley called the Allen Telescope Array. And it's named after Paul Allen, who was, of course, the co-founder of Microsoft along with Bill Gates. So he gave the money to get that thing started. And if you go up into, the Cascades of Northern California, you'll find these 42 antennas sitting there. The idea is to eventually broaden that to 350 antennas, but that takes more money, and all of this is privately funded.
Yeah, and in terms of how much data and information that you get in, do you have at these different experimental arrays, the different experiments, the different organizations, are there grad students reading the static readout, looking for that blip on a daily basis, or is this all going into a computer database somewhere in the cloud, waiting for a graduate student to analyze it?
Well, the answer to that is yes, because both of those, in a way. I mean, I hope that the grad students are up at the observatory now. They're supposed to be. But
yeah. In fact, get to work.
Exactly. But in fact, the data are analyzed real time, right? If we find a signal, you find signals all the time. Every minute you find signals. So you find a signal. There's some computer software, some computer algorithms that look at some very obvious characteristics of those signals and determine, well, is this likely to be ET, or is this clearly, AT&T? Is it just a telecommunications satellite wheeling overhead, or is it a radar set somewhere in the area? So most of the data reduction is done real time by those software programs. But there's also a plan, and it's underway now. It's called SETI-Quest, and you can Google that too, SETI-Quest. That's an initiative here that was taken after Jill Tarter, one of the astronomers here, won the TED Prize a couple of years ago. The idea is to make some of our data available for people to look at, actually to look at the data, not just to have a screensaver automatically process it, but to look at it. So that will involve people in actually handling, yes, join the quest. There you go. And so we're actually very excited about this, because it'll bring more people in. Also, there are opportunities for people who like to write software or cook up algorithms or whatever, that they can also get involved with our SETI project that way.
And is this like a step up from SETI at home? Is this a different way? Is this like a different way for people, with SETI at home being like that distributed processing that uses the idle time on people's computers? And Join the Quest seems like it's actually using people power.
Yeah, well, exactly. SETI at home is actually, we get the credit for that a lot, but it's not our project. It's a project from the guys at the University of California at Berkeley, a couple of people over there doing SETI. It's a very, very good project. It's been going for years now, and I'm told that something like in excess of 8 million people have downloaded that screensaver. So, but what SETI at home wants from you is, we want your compute power, okay? And so by, maybe a third of those people are actually doing SETI at home. So, we want 2 million computers. That's the world's biggest computer, after all. And so the data that are supplied for the SETI at home project are analyzed in ways that are far more refined than most SETI algorithms can be, because they don't have to be real time. So that's a very good project. But SETI-Quest is a little different in that it uses your eyes. You get this screen full of data, and the thought there is that, your eyes and your brain, since in most people they're connected, might be better at recognizing certain signals than a computer algorithm, because that's certainly been our experience. We can, the computers will find all sorts of data, and we look at it on the screens at the observatories. We can just take one glance and say, the computers are so confused. That's obviously just a local radar, whatever.
Computers, so logical, so logical.
Yeah. And the computers are not perfect yet. Not mine, anyhow.
Yeah. Do you think that this is going to increase is it just going to increase the processing of the data then that is coming in from the receivers that are out there from the different projects, or are we still having to deal with actually having an intelligent civilization somewhere within hearing range that we can actually hear?
Well, I mean, it'll increase the amount of data processing that we can do. If you have thousands of people actually looking at screens full of data, I mean, to begin with, they may find something that the computers would completely miss. That's really the idea. You can't have people looking at all the data, and there's just too much data, right? I mean, you're monitoring typically 100 million channels at once, and they're collecting another, byte of data, whatever, every second. So that's a pretty big data flow, right? There's no way you can get everybody to look at that,
yeah.
But no way you can get people to look at all of that, I should say. And so, the computers will continue to do much of the data reduction. But in those cases where there's some data that look interesting, that the computer doesn't know what to do with, humans might be better. That's the idea. I think that the important thing to point out, in fact, for SETI is this, because a lot of people don't recognize this. They're thinking of Jodie Foster wearing a pair of earphones, like we are, right? Just sitting on the hood of her car. That's right. Do I sound like Vega? Some transmission from Vega.
Bleep bloop.
Yeah, that's right. They figured that's the way SETI's done, and that it's the same this year as it was last year, as it was the year before. And of course, that's not true. We're not obviously using earphones, not for reducing SETI data. But beyond that, SETI follows Moore's law. In other words, it doubles in speed every 18 months. The average SETI experiment doubles in speed every 18 months. So, even though we haven't found ET yet, in the next couple of years, we'll collect more data than we've collected in the past 50. So I remain optimistic.
Yeah, more data and possibly have more ability to process it. Is SETI behind at all in analyzing data? Are any of the projects, we're looking at information that's coming from space. How many light years away? How far away? How far in the past are we from where the initial broadcast actually came from? And then how far behind are we in actually processing that data to find it? Are we like a year behind, or are we on top of it?
Well, it depends on which experiment you're talking about. If you talk about the Berkeley project, they farm out their data, and the data you get to run on SETI at home might be a few months old. That probably doesn't matter. I mean, that makes sense.
Until the aliens are here.
Well, in that case, they're only going to improve my social life. But so here, the kind of experiments we run, it's essentially real-time processing of the data. So I wouldn't say that we're behind in the data processing. It's true that any signal you pick up, of course, was broadcast some time ago. And a frequent comment that I get via emails and carved rock and all the other communication media that fall into my office every day is that, well, if you pick up a signal, it might have taken thousands of years to get here, and they may be dead by now, right? Well, thousands may be too much, but certainly hundreds, maybe 1,000. And indeed, maybe they are dead by now. But to begin with, that's not so likely because, doggone it, I get a letter from my aunt, and it took the postal service 3 days to get it to me, and it could be that my aunt is dead now when I get her letter, but on the other hand, 3 days isn't very long compared to the average lifetime of your aunts. So, probably she isn't dead. But beyond that, even if she were, nothing against my aunt here, but even if the signal we pick up is from a society that has blown itself up and isn't there anymore, it's still interesting. I mean, in high school Latin class, I read Cicero and Caesar and all that stuff, and those guys were all dead. The whole society had gone away, but it was still interesting. So I don't worry too much about that.
Yeah. How far away are you? Do you think that you can pick up signals with the microwave frequencies that you're looking at?
Well, that turns out to be entirely dependent on how much money ET is spending on their
how big an array. So the Allen array, the bigger it gets.
yeah, we can hear them farther away, of course, but I mean, it really depends mostly on how big a transmitter they have, how big an antenna they've got at their end, right? if they spent the bucks, or I don't know, the intergalactic cruceros, I'm not sure what it is what the unit of currency is in the rest of the galaxy. But if they spent the big bucks there, then you could hear them in principle. You could hear them, at the other end of the universe. Really, they'd have to have a very, very big antenna. But maybe they do tricks like you could use your own home star as a lens, a gravitational lens, and you could use it as a big antenna to focus your signal in a given direction, and make a very strong signal at a very great distance. It isn't terribly hard to send bits of information from one star system to the other.
And on that note, I'm going to have to take a very quick break to give a word of thanks to our sponsor. I'd like to thank GoToAssist Express. GoToAssist Express has sponsored this hour of Dr. Kiki's Science Hour. And if you're an IT software consultant, you're always on the lookout for ways to be more competitive. Oh, yes, you are. You need to grow your business. You can't be in two places at once. Unfortunately, you're not an advanced alien civilization. Not yet. Supporting your customers remotely is a great idea. And the faster you connect to a customer, the faster you can move on to the next challenge. And, of course, the next customer. So with GoToAssist Express, you can increase your revenue by handling more support requests. That's pretty good. Reduce travel time and overhead costs. Support clients even when they're not at their computers. Provide faster and more professional service, which can put you ahead of the competition. So here's the offer from GoToAssist to Express to you. You can try GoToAssist Express free for 30 days if you visit GoToAssistExpress.com/Kiki. That's right. Right now, if you're interested finding new ways to be able to fix that tech support, that pesky tech support problem, GoToAssist Express. Try it out for free. So it's no risk to you. For 30 days, just go to GoToAssist.com/Kiki. GoToAssist.com/Kiki. So it's really easy. You just start your session with one click. You get it started. You can send the person you're helping an instant email invitation. It works on cross-platform PCs and Macs. And you can share your screen and they can share yours so you both see the problem that they have. It also includes an integrated live chat, so you can put down the phone and have just a conversation online if that's what you'd like. Diagnose the problem as you access their desktop remotely. That's right. From wherever you are, you can access their desktop. GoToAssist tells you what software is running on their machine, their operating system, programs that are running, security software, etc. You can fix the problem by actually accessing the files on their computer or transferring files from your computer to theirs that will solve the problem. Sounds pretty nice. Sounds pretty easy. You'll solve more tech support questions more quickly and help clients even when they are away from their computer. GoToAssist is brought to you by Citrix, and all data exchange during your session is completely secure with end-to-end 128-bit encryption. Free customer service is available 24/7 if you actually need some help. That's right. GoToAssist.com/Kiki for your free 30-day trial. That's right. And back to the show, we are talking with Dr. Seth Shoatk from SETI Institute and the radio show Are We Alone? I'd like to take the second half of this show. We've been talking so far about SETI-Con and the research that SETI does, looking into the question of whether or not there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. We haven't even gotten into the question of extremophiles and the other research that SETI delves into. There's all sorts of stuff there, but I would like to take this opportunity to let a few of you ask your own questions, and let's see if we can actually get the phones to work this week. I know I have tried this on previous weeks and had some technical difficulties. So let's see if I think fourth or fifth time is a charm. Maybe it's just the third. I don't know. The phone number that you call is 724-444-7444. And if you are online and you have a TalkShoe account, you can use your Shoe phone and click to connect. through your shoe phone. Our call ID is 85027. And you can join in the conversation if you are so inclined. So initially when you call in, you will be muted, and I will unmute you and say hello. You'll hear my voice, and I will say hello to you to initiate our conversation so that this doesn't, descend into complete anarchy. I do like to have some order here. But in the meantime, Seth, we were talking about the research that SETI does. There were a couple of questions in the chat room related to, let's see, what was the question here I wanted to get to? There's one listener, Dallas Mars, wants to know if any current SETI investigations are sensitive enough to actually detect accidental radio leakage from civilizations like our own, or even more slightly advanced ones. What if they're just not beaming out the "I'm here" microwave messages?
Well, that's really a good question from Dallas, because indeed in the early days of SETI, the assumption of those people who were doing it was that we would pick up the aliens' leakage. In other words, the TV signals or the FM radio signals or some other sorts of signals that inadvertently leaked off their planet. And today, of course, we see the big transmitters on the hills outside of town kind of going away as people start getting your television via cable or a fiber optic or a direct broadcast satellite or some other way that doesn't require those big transmitters. So it's not only the question whether you could have found them in the first place, but if they're even still there, if the aliens have just completely sworn off that kind of broadcasting. Probably they have. And it would be very hard to find it anyhow with the kind of experiments we have today. You can work out how far away could we hear, for example, WABC in New York, WABC TV. If you want to watch your favorite sitcom or something. Well, I guess there aren't too many sitcoms anymore. But anyhow.
It's all reality.
It's a reality show. And if you want to do that, well, it turns out you'd run out of juice in less than a light year. The signal would be too weak for us to find with our SETI experiments. Now, of course, it's only been 100 years since Marconi here on this planet. So maybe in another 100 years, our SETI experiments would be more than adequately sensitive enough to pick up that kind of a broadcast. But the question still remains, will they even be broadcasting television? Who knows? I mean, really, who knows? Our radars are very powerful signals, and those are the sorts of things we could pick up. We could pick up alien radars if their radars are anything like ours. And believe it or not, there are a lot of radar transmitters on the planet. But I think that the bottom line, Alice, on all this is that, if you'd ask Marconi in 1900, say, Mr. Marconi, you've invented this thing, radio here. What do you think it'll be used for in the year 2010? Now, I'm sure he would have had a whole laundry list of ideas, but most of them would have been wrong. So I think we're on slippery slopes when we say that we know what kind of signal ET will be producing and then, try and say, well, we can't find that or we could find that, because they may have uses for radio transmissions that, we haven't thought of.
And we do have a caller in the chat room. East Maryland, you are on the phone, I believe. Are you there?
Hello.
Hello. Do you have a question for Seth?
I do. Seth, who would win a boxing match? Bill Nye the Science Guy or Baba Booey?
Thanks.
Where is this going to be held? At Ocean City, Maryland? Where's this going to be? Bethany Beach? What? I think it would be Bill Nye. I always bet on Bill Nye. He's my guy. Bill Nye the Science Lout. And actually, I once addressed him as Mr. Guy because I thought all those words were his last name, but apparently they're not. He is now, by the way, he is now the, he's the guy in charge of the Planetary Society. He just took over from Louis Friedman, who's been the Planetary Society head ever since the founding of the organization back in the days when Carl Sagan took the initiative to found that. But anyhow, Bill Nye is down there in Pasadena, California, and that's what he's doing. Anyhow, I vote for Bill Nye.
Great. Okay, and here is a question from, let me see if I can actually bring it up here. Here is a question from someone who called in and left a voicemail message.
This message is for Seth. And it goes, you must get email or actual letters from fans of your projects, but can you tell of getting letters from non-fans, maybe something funny, outrageous, or just misinformed? And the second question is, we know that because of great distances involved, that the search for ET is a lifetime endeavor. But 2 decades ago, would you have guessed that you'd still be part of this project?
Well, let me take the second one of those first, Kiki, if I can. 2 decades ago is when I joined the SETI-Institute. So I guess I'm not sure that I would have foreseen working for the SETI-Institute for as long as I have. Actually, this is the longest job I've had, and that is to say the longest job in a single place. And but I find it still interesting. You know, as I said earlier, the thing about SETI that keeps you going, right, despite the lack of finding a signal, is that, you know, every year you do it, the experiment gets faster. So to me, that's a sort of an endless incentive. And I honestly think, this is on the basis of some very simple and possibly erroneous calculations, that if this experiment is going to work, it's going to work within a few decades. If it doesn't work within a few decades, then I'd have to say there's something wrong with the approach. I doubt that I would say that the aliens aren't out there, but maybe that's true. But, you know, that would be hard for me to say. But on the other hand, I think that the experiment as it's conceived is either going to work relatively soon, within a few decades, or there's something wrong with our assumptions. As far as the other question, which is kind of an interesting one, do I ever get calls from fans or emails from people who are not fans, I guess I should say, people who have abusive things to say? And the answer to that is, you bet. I mean, it happens all the time, right? Now, to begin with, there's some very emotional subject we haven't talked about here, and that is the matter of, well, could the aliens be here on Earth, right? The UFO phenomenon. And for some reason, the UFO phenomenon and SETI are kind of water and oil. They don't mix very well. There seems to be a lot of emotion from both sides, really. One should be honest about this, but many of the UFO folk who get in touch with me, at least, think that I am remiss in not spending my time, you know, finding out what really happened in Roswell. I think I know what happened in Roswell, but they don't think that, or they don't agree with me or something. But that's very emotional, and that has occasionally, very occasionally, led to not only, you know, nasty letters where they say unpleasant things about some of my immediate relatives, but they also will you know, threaten me. I mean, physically threaten me. That doesn't happen very often. That's disturbing. I'm also in touch with most of the people that call up or write emails, and this happens every day, about UFOs, simply have seen something, and they just want to know, what is it that I saw? And usually I, can only make guesses. Well, obviously, I can only make guesses in all cases. Sometimes I think they're pretty good guesses. When people see Venus in the early evening sky, you can usually identify that. But frequently it's not Venus, and then I can only surmise what it might have been. I can't really help terribly much. There are 5 correspondents I have who not only think that the aliens are out there, but they think they are aliens. And so, by the way, they're all women. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe nothing. But in any case. But I enjoy this correspondence. I mean, I enjoy talking to people. I don't think that anybody who calls me up is trying to, perpetrate a hoax. I think they're all very sincere people. And a few of them are nasty, but I actually even enjoy those.
And we will move to one more question from Wildfire811. He's on. This is on the live line. Wildfire, are you there?
Hi, Dr. Kiki.
Hello. You have a question for Seth?
Chat room.
Oh, hi.
And I just wanted to, I saw an article online the other day on Dig about a man whose house has been hit by 6 meteorites in the past several years. And I thought that was a very interesting article, and I wonder if you have any comments about that.
Gee, I haven't seen that. That guy sounds like a fairly unlucky guy. Although maybe I'll take that back, because actually you can sell those things. You can sell the meteorites. There's a big market for that. There's your local meteorite outlet will be happy to buy them from you, and if it's big enough, it might be serious money. You might be able to buy a new car. Who knows? But 6 hitting one house. I'm sorry.
He actually, in the article it says he sold one of them to I believe a university in Norway, and put a reinforced in the Netherlands, and put a reinforced roof on his house.
Yeah,
that's good investment.
I think you ought to talk to the neighbors. I mean, it's kind of unlikely that you're going to get 6 meteors actually slam through the roof of your house. I mean, really, that I just find that very difficult to believe. Something may be falling through the roof of his house, but is he in the flight path of airliners or something? I mean, really. meteors in general, they're meteors all the time, of course. You just go out at night and you can see shooting stars here, there, and elsewhere. But most of those are the size of a sand grain, right? They don't make it to the surface of the Earth because they just burn up in the atmosphere. Something has to be, as big as a coffee cup or something like that to make it all the way down to the ground. And those are actually quite rare. In fact, in all of recorded history, apparently no one that, we ever wrote it down in any case, nobody was ever killed by a meteor. Now, mind you, 2/3 of all species on Earth were killed by a rock from space, but that was 65 million years ago, right? In the daily paper, they don't have a listing of meteorite deaths, on the back pages or anything, because it just has never happened. There was a car that was damaged by a meteor once, and a couple of houses have been hit, but one house being hit 6 times, gosh, I have to say, on the surface of it, I'm kind of skeptical, but the guy should not look a gift horse in the mouth. He can reinforce his roof, but he ought to put, he ought to put Velcro all over his roof so he can collect those meteors and sell them.
Thanks very much for calling in. And now we have, I guess we'll take this as a final question here because we are running out of time in the hour, unfortunately, because this is a lot of fun. Let's see. How about this one up at the top of the list?
Hi, Dr. Kiki. I hope this call isn't too late for your distinguished guest, Dr. Shoatk. My name is Joseph Pravda, and I'm curious beyond measure as to what his reaction is to Paul Davies' book, The Eerie Silence, which basically says what Shoatk has been doing is a waste of time and antiquated, anthropocentric, etc. Please inquire. Thank you.
All right. Well, let me first say
do you have a response?
Yes, it's my job a waste of time. Well, what do you think I'm going to say to that, Joseph? Let me first off point out that Paul Davies actually is not only an acquaintance, but a good friend. So, and his book is called The Eerie Silence because what he is maintaining is that, doggone it, 50 years you guys have been looking, haven't found anything. That must mean something. You're doing the wrong experiment, or the aliens simply aren't out there. There's just something wrong here. And, on the surface of it, that sounds right, but it isn't. And it isn't right because of this. And Paul is aware of this, by the way. And that is that the number of star systems we've looked at with our SETI equipment carefully, that is over a wide range of frequencies and a fairly high sensitivity, is about 750 star systems. Now, the Milky Way galaxy has, a couple of 100 billion star systems. And we've looked at 750 of them, right? So that's, Joseph, that's like going to Africa and looking for megafauna, right? And you land on the, the west coast of Africa or whatever, and you look at one city block of real estate, and you say, God, there are no giant critters here with long noses that can pick up peanuts with them. Clearly, this continent is devoid of megafauna. Right? You might make that statement, but it wouldn't really be justified because you'd only looked at one city block of the entire continent of Africa. Right? So it's the same deal. We've looked at a tiny, tiny, tiny sample of the star systems in our galaxy and haven't found a signal. But all that means is we haven't looked at enough star systems, to my mind. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that they're not out there.
Great. And do you know anything about someone named Billy Meyer? There's one last question, and are you interested in answering a question?
Well, I'm interested in hearing the question. Just an answer.
All right, here's the question. It's the last one that I've got on my list.
Hi, Dr. Kiki. This is Matt Ames. I'd like to ask Seth what, and if he's had any contact with Billy Meyer, and what his opinions are on the metallic compounds that were supposedly left to Billy, and also, what his opinions are in general of the accounts of Billy Meyer. All right, thank you so much. I hope all is well. Bye.
Well, I hope Billy Meyer is not, going to take offense at this. I remember Billy Meyer. He's a guy in, is it Switzerland, I believe? In any case, either Sweden or Switzerland, but I think it's Switzerland. All those S countries sound the same to me after a while. And he had some film footage of UFOs, actually. But if you look at those films, to me, they just look like, model saucers hanging on a fishing line in his backyard. So maybe they weren't, but that's what they looked like. So they weren't, to my mind, that's not compelling evidence. If I can look at this video and say, you could do that with a plastic model and fishing line, then, I'm not going to put it in the Smithsonian. Okay. He has subsequently produced some other evidence. I've been in contact with some of these people. I have never met Billy Meyer myself. I have talked to people who work with him, and that's as close as I've ever gotten. Look, I think the bottom line there, as far as the aliens have left him some, samples of exotic materials. To begin with, you got to ask, why is it they left them with Billy Meyer? But, aside from that, who's to know what the aliens have in mind when they decide, well, we're going to go to Earth and we're going to prove that we exist by leaving these exotic samples of this guy in Switzerland. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it isn't that when Columbus came to the New World, he says, I'm going to prove to these guys that Europeans really exist because I'm going to take this one guy over there in the jungle and I'm going to give him a quill pen from Spain or something like that. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But even if it's true, all that Billy Meyer has to do is to take these materials to the local university. Have them look at it. Look, the deal about the UFOs is that it's not impossible that we could be visited, right? It's just not impossible. It doesn't violate physics. But if you are going to make the claim that we are being visited, then, trot out the best evidence. Give us the kind of evidence that would, not only be suitable for stacking up at the local science museum, but that would convince the scientists. I hear all the time that, well, you scientists just won't look at the evidence. But that's kind of malarkey because... of course scientists would look at it. There couldn't be anything more interesting than to prove that we're being visited. So, get out the best evidence. Don't give all the poor evidence. Just get out the best and, make the case.
Thank you very much, Seth. This has been so much fun.
It's been my pleasure. And, that sounds like a gratuitous compliment, but it is true. I've enjoyed it, Kiki.
Excellent. I would hate to have you, feeling like you're having your fingernails pulled out while you're... that would be the worst. So,
I don't think that feels like, but I don't want to know.
So anyone who is interested in SETI-Con and being a part of the celebration for this year, this massive year for SETI, you can check out the SETI Institute. Or you can go to the SETI-Con website itself. SETI has a website at SETI.org. Lots of information there about the research that SETI does. We didn't even dig into the astrobiology extremophile stuff that is part of their exploration. What kind of life and what conditions create life? So there's even more going on at SETI than we even got into today. SETI-Con itself is at SETICon.com, and yeah, you too could potentially see Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead, or rock out with Phil Plait with Rock Band. And that is August 13th to 15th, 2010 at the Hyatt Regency in Santa Clara. And if you are interested in Seth's radio show, you're probably able to hear it on a radio station near you, but the website, radio.seti.org, gives you a great place to start looking. And it's a fabulous, fabulous show. Seth and Molly, who host the show, do a wonderful job of talking about the current scientific research that's going on, stuff that's interesting. As it says, radio, science radio for thinking people. Is there any place that people can find you? Are you on Twitter?
Well, I am. I'm on Twitter and Facebook. Not often enough. To me, it's all new technology, just like the typewriter is. So.
Typewriter, paper. You came around after all this.
The
fire.
The wheel's going to make it as an invention. Yes. I'm on Twitter. I hope somebody just don't tweet me because I don't really look at that. But send me a message on Facebook. You can do that. I think I have 4 friends, and 3 of them are relatives. But I'd be happy to hear from anybody. I'm very easy to find. Email, everything. So I'm even easy to find on the streets of Mountain View.
Excellent. The Mountain View space alien people will come looking for you, I'm sure.
Job security.
Well, thank you so much. Once again, this has been fantastic. This has been the Science Hour. I am Dr. Kiki, and if you are interested in even more hours of science. You can find past episodes of Dr. Kiki Science Hour at twit.tv/Kiki. It's a whole library of stuff from over the past year. Additionally, you can find me online I'm on Twitter, Dr. Kiki. Just Google me. You'll find me. If you want to call and leave me a voicemail, you can call 650-741-KIKI. That's 5454. So 650-741-5454. And leave me a voicemail with any comments, questions, ideas for the show, feedback. I love that kind of stuff. I like to incorporate more of it into the show, and I can only do that with your help. You can also email me at drkiki@twit.tv. So if you don't want to use the phone, you can actually use old-fashioned email. It works too. Next week on the Science Hour, we're going to be speaking with Dr. David Eagleman about time perception and synesthesia, two of my favorite subjects. So I hope that you will join me next week for more science and more fun. Because remember, 1 hour is all it takes, and we'll make your world a whole lot more interesting. Thanks for watching.